Hey everybody, it's Rob here. Welcome to my mid-season updated tier list. We have gone through all the builds with all the changes that they have made, and that is coming up here for the mid-season patch this Monday. So in just a few days, it's here and it's changing a lot of things. Generally, this is a very positive patch and almost every class gets some major buffs. Some more than others for sure. I'm gonna link the full patch notes and also the full list that I have here in a spreadsheet that we will talk about. There's also going to be planner links and all that stuff right there. And yeah, some classes are a bit more happy than other classes, and I hope that at some point they'll finally, pet the wolf here some more. But even for the druids, there are a lot of positive changes. There are a lot of positive changes for almost any class, including our favorite, the Barbarian. So I tried to rank these builds, and keep in mind, guys, this is mostly gonna be focused on the pit and the end game pushing. This is not gonna be focused on the leveling stuff, and we will try to rank every build from like S plus all the way down to like F tier pretty much. And keep in mind, we have not played this new patch yet, especially the Holy Bolt change. I'm gonna link that video. We made a detailed video about that. I'm gonna link that in the description. And we don't know for sure like what exactly does it mean with the Holy Bolt here that's changing, but this is definitely affecting the Necromancer in a major way, and also some of the Barb builds for sure. So just take it with a bit of a grain of salt, all this tier list, because again, we have not been able to play this patch yet. But with that, let's jump into the list, and we're gonna start at the bottom here. I'm gonna show you the top here in just a couple of minutes. And we're starting down here in like C tier. And you notice like some pretty cool builds down here that have been buffed significantly, but still not enough, I think, to make it out of here. And there is the Twisting Blade Rogue. This is the melee rogue. It has been moving down from like D tier up to C tier. I think it got about +5 like pit levels worth of damage out of this. And finally, it's time for some cool melee rogue builds, but I don't think it's quite enough yet. We also have the Wolf Companion, which got like a 3 pit tier buff because of the Holy Bolt elixir, but also not quite there yet. And we have one of the big winners here, which is the Pulverized Druid. So you might know this build. It's actually a pretty cool build to play, and it's essentially, a better upheaval Barb. And this one has gotten quite a few buffs from the recent patch, and it seems to be that this build got about 11 to 12 tier buff in total out of this. But the problem is, and you guys can see here, this is the highest clear I could find. Let me know if you've seen anybody do higher. You guys can see here, this guy is kind of struggling in 107. And is going to get bumped up roughly by 10 tiers. Probably on the high end, maybe even 11 or 12. So it might just scratch the pit tier 120 level. And it's pretty cool, definitely, to see buffs to this. It's a very cool build. I just don't think it's quite enough yet to close the gap to other top contenders here, because it's just like so reliant on overpowers, and even like surviving can be tough on this druid. It's been buffed tremendously. It's going to be very strong for leveling, I think, and for a bunch of other things. So I'm going to leave the link to that clear and the tier list down below here. And it's cool to see buffs, but I think we need some more on the druid here, and also on the melee rogues, for example, to really make up for this kind of stuff. But yeah, Pulverize is probably going to be a very cool leveling build, but on the high end, it's still going to fall a bit short here, just in C tier. And then we have, the Tornado Druid. It also got some buffs. We have the Hurricane Druid. It also got some buffs. We have a bunch of Sorc builds here in B tier. So I'm expecting these to do like 120 plus, a bit stronger than the Pulverize, which I think will cap out at 120. And that's mostly how it's going to go. And yeah, next we have the Whirlwind Bleed buff. So this one, you might have seen my previous video. It seems to be they buffed this a lot, right? There's been like basically a bunch of different buffs here to the Uber Uniques, to the Ring of the Starless Sky, which is used by the Whirlwind Barb. There's been buffs to the Tyrell's Might, which has been used by the Whirlwind Barb. And there's also been buffed directly to Whirlwind, and also buffs directly to the Twisters, to the Dust Devils here. But as we go in the planner here, and also some of the footage, you still notice that Whirlwind, even after these buffs, and I will explain in a separate video like why they are not as crazy as they initially sound. But you will like notice that it's still gonna have problems against single target bosses. But I'm very confident that Whirlwind is gonna be one of the best builds for anything in the game but killing bosses. So if you're doing the open world, if you're doing Hell Tides, if you're doing like a speedrun pit clears, if you're doing nightmare dungeons, and all these activities, if you're doing whispers, like all these activities except boss killing and high pit pushing, I'm comfortable that this is going to be one of the best and fastest builds in the game to do just that. I've have like a full guide here with some gameplay and everything here. And this build is just extremely fast. And it can dish out tremendous amounts of damage. You can see here, just me on the target dummies here. Just blasting out twisters and arrows and spinning and winning, basically. It's going to be one of the top builds for sure. But this is, again, mostly for low-level content. Because you can see, even me here, the run is pretty fast. Here, this is just dishing through like a tier pit 95 in like, I don't know, 1 minute 20 or something. But then the boss fight still takes some time. So I'm expecting around a 5-tier buff to this build. But it's still not going to feel great on the bosses because all these buffs to Tyrell's Might and also to the Twisters are like separate sources of damage. So it's not really getting double damage. It's more like getting 50% because your pillars are Whirlwind damage, which is not really relevant. Your pillars are Tyrell's Might procs and Whirlwind and the bleed based of that. So this is still going to happen, guys. You're still going to struggle against the bosses on Whirlwind. But again, for everything else, it's one of the top builds. But it just made it into B tier here. It used to come from C tier right into B tier. I think you can do like 120 pit with it if you get the right boss like Scourge of Lance or something. But overall, not strong enough. We also have a bunch of Sorc builds here. There's the Ball Lightning Sorc, there's the Frozen Orb Sorc, there's the Blizzard Sorc. They all got some buffs. There's the Hoda Barb here. But not really anything like significant in terms of buffs. And I would have really hoped that Frozen Orb would have gotten, you know, a return to former glory. I said it in my hopes and dreams video. That I was like kind of hoping that this would be, you know, buffed again to the PTR glory days basically it had. But it's still like stuck maybe on 120 max. It's a fun build. I think we have like 116 clear here on Frozen Orb. It is very fun to play. But yeah, I feel like they have over-nerfed this quite a bit. And it's just like very hard now to play. And what I was like really hoping for, that the Frozen Orb is going to be much stronger. So they've been buffing Sorcerers a lot. Especially and pretty much mostly the top build. And Sorcerer later on has the top build of the tier list is a Sorc build revolving around Shatter. And this build has just done 150 solo pit clear and is just getting another like 20-25% buff with the patch. So overall, the Sorc class has the strongest builds, or has the strongest build in the game, but all the other builds are kind of down bad. So I really feel for the Sorcs, and I would really love to see, you know, for, I don't know, maybe for Season 5, for Frozen Orb to make a return to its former, you know, PTR glory. Maybe even something like the Frosty Stride Sorc or something, which is also down here in C tier. So that could also be very cool. But yeah, Ball Lightning and Blizzard all feel very similar. And these are, with one exception, the highest that the Sorcs make it in this tier list. So there's a very big imbalance for the Sorcs here. We also have the Shadow Blight, Lazy Necromancer, some of these stuff. We have the Dust Devil, Leap Barb, which is also kind of decent. But I think Whirlwind is just going to be the play now with the Twisters. I mean, you could probably put Double Swing somewhere here as well into B tier, but only with Twisters. So we'll see what's going to happen with all of these. But again, Whirlwind, top build for speed farming, but still not great against bosses. Because people ask me all the time, can you kill the tormented bosses with this? I mean, you can, but why would you? You know, it's still going to feel bad against single target. And yeah, there's cool buffs here, and it's going to help the Whirlwind Barb quite a bit. But it's still going to feel very bad against single targets. Okay, we're moving up. Another 5 tiers here. We're now moving into A tier territory. And this is the best Druid build in the game, sadly. It's the Wind Shear Druid, currently sitting at 122 here. This is like a generator dot-based build. It's basically playing ranged. And it's shooting a bunch of stuff here at the enemies. It is pretty strong, but it's definitely not strong enough. It also got a buff about 2 tiers. We had like the boon buffs. We had some passive buffs to quick shift and some of the other passives here that work really well with this druid. But the problem is it's only getting like +2, maybe +3 tier buff. And you guys can see here, this druid here is struggling in 122. He does clear it, but it's a hard push already. So if you get 3 tiers stronger, you're still maximum at 125. While almost all the other classes are doing like 135 plus, so still 10 tiers above this. And for Sorcerer, like they're even doing 25 tiers above this. So yeah, the Druid is still in a rough spot, even though there was no nerfs to Druid, only buffs. But it's just not enough to close the gap between the Druid and all the other classes. Like the Druid's down here, maybe it moved like here, and all the other classes just stayed up here. So yeah. It's still a bit rough for the Druids, and there was a lot of like you know, rather sad Druids here with the buffs, because there was like an expectation just to get some more stuff. But yeah. Then we have the Penshot Rogue, still a pretty good build. Blasting, it's also revolving around the double dipping bug. It didn't really get any buffs, so there's not much more to talk about here. But then we have something really cool next here in A tier as well. It's the Bone Spirit Necromancer. And this one is basically blasting here with crazy amounts of overpower, grouping the monsters and just dishing out millions and millions. I don't know what's the hit here. Yeah, like here, 500 million damage, and this is on every hit, and he generates a lot of essence, and he is sacrificing a lot, and you can sacrifice a lot more than he is here. Because they are buffing sacrifices throughout the board in this mid-season patch, and everything that you sacrifice just gets stronger, and so does this build. You get a lot more sacrifice bonuses. I believe this one will go up by 4 to 5 pit levels, so it's very comfortable sitting in the 125. Then next we have the Shadow Minion Necromancer, and boy how the mighty have fallen. You guys might remember my old tier list that I'm going to share here. The Shadow Minion Necromancer was the top build and the highest pit clear for a long time, not only in the Necro but overall, before the Sorcerer has figured out some crazy tech and the Barbs did. But the Minion Necromancer here moved from S plus down to the top of A tier. So there is 144 clear that we have here, but this one is only with Holy Bolt Elixir. You see here himself, he does no damage whatsoever, so you can he can fight this boss for ages. He can never do any damage to it, and then suddenly, you know, one minion explodes, boom. And this boss has like 1 trillion life, so he does like 500 billion damage, 500 billion in like one hit. But this is only based on the Holy Bolt Elixir, which is now being changed not to work like this anymore. So it looks like the highest clear that I was able to find was 125. And this is about 20 tiers lower, or like at least 15 to 20 tiers lower than what it could do with the Holy Bolt Elixir. So Minion Necromancer is still going to be extremely strong, one of the best builds for leveling, and also going to feel very powerful with the Golem. But on the very high end, I think it's capping out, and that's why it only made it into A tier. It didn't make it much higher, because no more Holy Bug Elixir, and we'll see how strong it's going to be after. I think you can push this probably in 130, and it might move up from A tier, like to the bottom of S tier, but I don't actually think so. I think it's sitting more here in the A tier, doing like just maybe under 130 if you push it really hard. So this is the biggest loser, if you want to say, of the patch because of the Holy Bolt change, but it's only the biggest loser because it was abusing this Holy Bolt bug the most. Like, it was abusing it to the most fullest extent, and the Necromancer overall got a lot of buffs here in general. But yeah, this Holy Bolt Elixir is definitely hurting the Necromancer. It's also going to hurt the Bleed Barb, which is coming up next year. But this is going to be extremely hurtful for this build. I think it's still going to be like a very, very solid build. Still a very good choice. But this is currently the top Necromancer build that I have in this tier list. Moving up a bit more here into S tier. Before we talk about the S and the S plus tier, I just want to say real quick, guys, that there is also a hint in the patch notes that they are changing the way that the pit enemies scale their life. So, you know, in the high tiers, the bosses have in crazy amounts of health. And this might get adjusted here with this. We made this change, so the Holy Bolt nerf, alongside a reduction to the health of enemies in the pits. So players who are delving deep into the pit aren't heavily affected. So this might change the ranking some more. But I did not take these pit nerfs into real consideration because we don't really know what it's going to be. Like, are they going to nerf the life by 10%? Are they going to nerf the life by 50%? Are they going to nerf the life by more than 100? You know, like, who knows? Like, are they going to like cut it in half or something? We'll see. But I would think that this would impact all the builds equally. So let's say, you know, the pits get the life cut in half, right? 50% life reduction. Then probably every build here is going to move up like 8 to 9 tiers, right? So then it would just be 148 plus, it would be 138 plus, and so on, you know. So this would be 133, but this would, I think, impact all the builds equally. Again, we will know more detail on Monday, and if it's like super unexpected, I will make yet another update, but I think this is a very good guess already for the current power level and how it's affecting things. So the Necromancer, you can see here, dropped all the way out from S tier. And there is another build here that dropped out, which is the Bleed Bashbar, because it was revolving around the Holy Bolt elixir as well. We'll talk about that in a second. But we're going down here from, what is this, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is like one of the top builds now. And you see Rogue has 3 builds up here, and you can call it S tier and S plus, or you can call it S and A tier, doesn't matter. But it has like 3 builds here sitting very comfortable on almost the top. And this is the Endariel Flurry Rogue. This Endariel is going to get a buff of 50%. So you're going to deal a lot more damage with this Uber Unique. And this was already like a very promising build. And this is definitely not the highest it can do. But this is basically just proccing, revolving around the lucky hit proc of Endariel. And inflicting like big dot damage here. So I think this is one of the big winners from the patch. Again, like he's blasting through like 130 here and is absolutely melting down these packs with the Endariel's Visage. It's pretty strong. You see, boom, like he does. So what was this? This is already, he's gonna hit for Barbarians. Look at this. Like he's already doing 700 million dot. So this is like a 1.5 Barbarian damage. And this 1.5 per second, so this is 1.5 billion. It's going to get buffed by another 1.5. So he's always sitting just in this tier at about 2 billion damage. And it's only going to go up from there because I'm not sure how optimized he is. I think very comfortable. This might be one of the best new builds, even competing with the double dipping bugged Heartseeker Rogue. So they basically removed all the double dipping from the game with the Holy Bolt elixir. And that has been extremely good for the long-term health of the game. Again, I made a separate video that I'm going to link in the description highlighting this in great detail. But the only class for now that dodged this double dipping nerf is the Rogue with the Victimize. So this Endariel build is not based on a bug, but many of the next builds here, including Penshot, are based on this double dipping of damage. So there was a pretty funny meme here. This this Rogue has a very secret technique, and it's called +2 to exploit, but Rogue only. So there's still this double dipping bug in the game here for the Rogue, while they have nerfed it for all the other classes, but the Rogue still has it. And this is another top build here. Victimize Heartseeker, currently sitting at 134. And I think it's, I've seen many clears that are very, very close to 135. And for some reason, the double dipping is still in the game, not addressed. They have changed this historically in the past with all the mechanics that were double dipping. And I think this is going to change long term for sure. But at the moment, it's still in the game and you can still play around this bug, and it's working very well. It's in 134, and I think it has potential to go even above 135 here. You see, doing like crazy amounts of damage, but only based on this double dipping mechanics. While I think the other two Rogue builds that we are talking about here, these are like, you know, more on the legit side, and they are equally as strong, or I believe they will be equally as strong, because there's another one here, Rapid Fire. You might have seen this. There has been a lot of bugs and a lot of different mechanics, like we call it the Drunken Rogue, when it was not hitting any shots anymore. But they are basically, where's this change? Here they are fixing the issue where Rapid Fire with Scoundrel's Kiss couldn't properly hit close enemies. This is also going to make it very viable for controller players. And they are also increasing the radius explosion size. This is going to be extremely helpful for the build. And it already did 128 with the video that we just watched. So I'm pretty confident that it's going to sit here at 130 pit very, very comfortable with this build. And this is not based on a bug. So Rapid Fire Rogues Rejoice. This is super cool. You have like all these, like, I don't know if you hear it here. You have like all these amazing, oh wait, this is the wrong one. You have all these amazing sound effects in these kind of clears here. So this is the 128 with the rapid fire. And it's shooting like all these rockets here. Okay, there's some music here. But you see, this is the one here. Like you basically shoot these rockets and these make an amazing sound. I think this is the coolest rogue build to play. Again, not revolved on a bug, just a full legit build. And I think this one is pretty cool, and it's going to be one of the top rogue builds next to the Endariel's Visage. And yeah, we'll see what's happening with the Heartseeker stuff. But yeah, then next guys here, and this might surprise some people. I've had the Bleed Bash Barb in S tier. There has not been any direct nerfs to the Bleed Bash Barb, but there certainly has been changes to this Bleed Bash Barb. And I want to talk about it here real quick. So there are two versions. There's a direct and there is a damage over time spec of this. And the main difference is basically that you have Berserk Ripping in the bleed spec. And this one had some pretty crazy interaction with the Holy Bolt mechanics. Also double dipping, just like the Victimized Rogue. But this one is now supposedly being addressed and nerfed. So the bash is not getting any change. The bash is supposed to be a multiplayer. They've said this many times. It was all a communication error. So it's here to stay. It's not a bug, but it is pretty powerful. And the Holy Bolt elixir has been changed. So this Bleed Barb actually did 144. But as you can see here on the clears, he did so by using the Holy Bolt elixir. And his damage would not even be close to here, like 8 billion damage a second, because again, hitting twice a second. His damage would not even be close to this without the Holy Bolt elixir. You can see when the Holy Bolt procs, his bleed goes up like crazy every time he does it. And yeah, he did 144 with this. And this one is definitely going down. I think the highest clear that Bleed Bash Barb has done, and you can correct me, there might be higher clears now. But the highest one, I think, was 134 here. That has just been done without Holy Bolt elixir. And again, you can always play the different kinds of versions here. I believe he has no Holy Bolt elixir. He is also fighting the same boss. But you guys can see here, there's no Holy Bolt proccing. This is the direct damage version, I think. And you guys can see here, he is doing some pretty significant damage nonetheless, just with his direct hits. So hitting for like 200, 300 million with every direct hit. And this is the direct version. I think the bleed version, here 500 million actually. The bleed version will also compete with this. But they are both somewhere around the same level now with the double dipping being adjusted. Again, we will have to test this on Monday. And the Bash Barb is still one of the best builds, even though it lost its S tier plus status due to the Holy Bolt elixir fix. So this can do 134. And I think this is like where it's gonna, this is the old tier list, and I think this is like where it's gonna be capping out there. Maybe you can do like 138 or something, but I don't think it's gonna go up to the 140 stuff that we see here from some other Barbarian builds. And yeah, with that, the Bash has sadly fallen down. There is a couple more cool things here. There is a Coda buff. So for all the boss killer enjoyers, there's the Call of the Ancients here that we're using in our boss killer version. So this one has been buffed by quite a bit. So at the moment it's a 20% X and it's going to be a 25% X. So this is going to help us out pretty well here and increasing our damage even further. And yeah, overall, it's still a good stuff to see the Holy Bolt elixir fixed because, like I said in the other video, I think a character's power should come from the individual build and the skills you use, and not from an environmental theme. such as the Holy Bolt elixir. I think this is extremely unhealthy for the game long term. I also didn't really like it when they did this in Diablo 3, where they introduced like snowballs and like angels and lightning from the sky that would basically carry you, and your character build guide and your skills and your stats pretty much become irrelevant because this environmental seasonal theme is carrying you. So I also liked Holy Bolt elixir for like a couple days, but long term I think this is very unhealthy for the game. So it's a good thing that all this like double multi-dipping, you know, mechanics get changed, because it's like super unintuitive for the player. And a very good thing here that this has been addressed, in my opinion, even though if it's nerfing one of my favorite builds, which was the Bleed Bash buff. But it is still very strong, guys. And you can just play it right now, even without the Holy Bolt elixir. I think it's going to be very strong. And you gotta keep in mind, guys, the elixir is going to be completely gone after the season ends anyways in August 6th. And then these builds have to carry their own weight. So even for people that are sad about the Minion Necromancer with the Holy Bolt elixir and stuff, this was never, you know, supposed to stay in the game anyways, right? So this has only been in the season, and I think it's good. This is changing already. It might not feel good in the moment, but long-term health for the game, it's a big W. What they could have done is taken this elixir out like after the season and not done it mid-season. I could have seen that. But it is what it is, and we're here. We got to make the best of it. And I still think it's a positive change for the game. So this has been the S tier, guys. The bleed barbs. There is actually a new setup that I've already prepared here. Because for this direct bleed, for the bleed without holy bolts, there is a new setup that I'm going to link here. It's in the tier list already. And this one is now revolving around Turael's Might. So we got rid of Undying and we got the Turael's Might in. And I think this is going to be a pretty strong setup, actually. Helping us out tremendously here, dealing more damage. Now the damage is doubled as of the patch notes. And again, Turael's Might can also inflict bleeds based on your direct damage, right? So with Berserk Ripping. And that's basically what we're doing here. It's one of the cooler builds already that I've been playing here for a long time. And I'm probably going to make an updated build guide once I get a chance to play it. You guys can see here, when I buff myself, we actually are rocking 84 to all resistances with this setup. And yeah, no more Undying. We just get the healing from our raid leader. And we get the healing, you know, from just our health potions, which, by the way, they're also buffing. So I think this indirectly doesn't require you to use Undying anymore, at least on the high end. Like, if you're like a casual player, I still recommend Undying. But if you're on the high end and you have a Turael's Might, on the patch on Monday, with the healing buffs and also with 1 or 2 points in raid leader, we can also be rocking the Turael's Might here on the Bash Bleed. And I think this is going to be extremely strong, because it's going to give us a tremendous amount of damage reduction, like going from 70 all res to like 84. You can even get to 85 if you're using and you're smoking some instances. It's going to be extremely good and extremely big buff to the toughness. Also another 15% DR for everything that you're getting. It's also fixing the all res problems here a bit better. And yeah, it's going to give you all stats so to hit all your Paragon nodes. So that is pretty insane. And just a pretty cool buff overall. So Bash Buff, guys, still one of the best builds. Only in very, very high pit pushing is it gonna lose out against the other top builds that we're gonna talk about now. So coming in at numero 3, top 3 build, Thorns Barbarian. You guys may remember, do not hit me here. He actually did 140 and there is no nerfs coming to the build. He was not even using any Holy Bolt elixir. This is the Leap Thorns Barb. And I believe he is blasting down these bosses, and he's blasting down the run like crazy. And just been running this forever, and I think his stats are like, you guys can see at the end, he's rocking with, so this is how the playstyle is, like you basically just make a group and you let the monsters hit you. And there is basically no nerfs coming to this. They're even buffing some of the Thorns Bleed damage passives. It's not gonna be a major difference for this build. So this is pretty much unchanged. If anything, it's slightly buffed, and it's already doing 140 and not relying on any Holy Bolt elixir. You guys can see here, this guy, he has a crazy amount of, okay, that's a pretty sick razor blade. I mean, he has pretty sick items, first of all. But he also has insane amounts of health here. So you guys can see here, I go back a couple frames, he has 414k health. Super wide Barbarian. And he's showing his gear. This is also going to be linked in the tier list here. And yeah, he has a pretty insane gear, of course. Like, this is a hell of a razor plate. Yo, that is insane. I mean, who cares about the item power? You have max armor anyways. So, yeah, the Thorns buff here coming in at number 3. There is a small buff, I think, here to Tough as Nails, further increasing your bleed damage. However, this is not really a big buff to the Thorns because you are mainly relying on your Thorns direct damage rather than on your bleed. But, you know, everything helps a little bit here. So just some more buffs even to this build, like very minor. And no nerfs because it didn't use Holy Bolt Elixir before. And then, guys, coming in at number 2 is the Flay Barbarian. And this one, I don't know why it removed the links here. I'm going to fix that later. And this one, guys, is currently sitting, and you might say there's higher clears. $134. I think there was 143 clear. I think there was, sorry, let me find this one real quick. So there is 130, 142, and I think there's also 143 clear now by this Barbarian here with Flay. And very surprisingly, guys, they actually buffed the Flay up here. You guys can see this guy fighting the boss. So this is the Flay up here, and you guys can see he is doing, see if I can find some good clips here. So he's attacking the boss, and he is doing 2 billion Flay damage, 2.7 billion damage every second, no Holy Bolt Elixir. And this one is getting about a 13% buff, and whenever he's using Rupture, see when he's doing it here, so he's using the Wharton Rupture here, not consuming the bleeds, and whenever he's hitting his Rupture, it's gonna be hitting the boss for like multiple and multiple. Here you see 76 billion damage with his Rupture. Completely insane, doing 143 here on the high end. And this is one of the best builds, and it has been buffed. There's been 2 buffs to the build. So we're getting a buff to bleeding damage is 8% X. We're getting a longer time for the vulnerable, which doesn't really matter because you're just attacking the boss and he's vulnerable all the time. But we're also getting a buff to Battle Flay, which is another 5% increase. And this also helps the Thorns build a bit. More damage reduction from Combat Flay. And plus duration, plus stack amount increase. So this is actually giving you a 20% damage reduction for the Thorns build. But for the Flay build, we are mainly using the Battle Flay. And this one will turn out, I did the math here, I think, will turn out to be roughly a 13% buff to the Flay. But you also got to keep in mind, and some of you might say, yeah, but Rob, Flay cleared 148. But that is not really a Flay build. This is mainly revolving around the Holy Bolt Elixir as well. And this build, again, is only possible with minions and Rupture. And you guys can see he's basically dealing no damage until the Holy Bolt proc. So this build is getting a nerf. The 148 is not going to be possible, at least not easy with these buffs, because you're basically losing about 5 to 6 tiers because Holy Bolt Elixir is gone. So you can't do this crazy bleeds, and you now have to rely on just your Flay and your Rupture dealing direct or bleeding damage, but no longer Holy Bolt Elixir to dish out these crazy 148 clears that you guys have maybe seen here by some players here. I think this is footage from Kingpig. So he's been spearheading all this like Flay stuff, and it's actually crazy to see that they buff Flay. You see here the damage. Like this guy has trillions total life. It's 148, and you can see here he's just like absolutely blasting this guy down with the Holy Buck Elixir. And again, this is changing. So contrary to popular belief, guys, Flay, at least on the high tier, is getting a nerf. So you roughly lose 5 tiers from the Holy Bolt being gone, from the 148. But that puts you at 143, which the video is here. I'm going to link it later. And then we're getting a 13% buff, which puts you, you know, 1 or 2 pits higher again, pit levels. So you are only, like, in the end, losing about 3 pit levels. So I'm pretty comfortable that this Flay Barb is going to rock in the mid 140s. I think it's going to clear 145, 146. But this is not enough to make it to the very top, guys. And on the top, there is this one build on a Sorc, which is even getting more buffs, which is completely insane. Like these, the Flay buff and also the Shatter buff are very hard to understand for me and for top players, because these are already the top builds and they are making them even stronger. So all the other builds have not even any chance to be anywhere close to these builds. So Shatter is getting yet another buff. It's going from 25x to 30% x. And there's also a couple other changes coming. So in the end, I think I calculated here, it's basically they also buff some pyromancy passive. So there is about a 23% buff for the strongest build in the game that already did 150. So it's gonna clear, this is the best build in the game, but in no way does it represent the current problem that the Sorcerer class has. You see, the Sorcerer's next best build is in B tier, like just sitting at 30 tiers. It's actually that bad. It's sitting 30 tiers behind the next best, ahead of the next best Sorc build, which is like Ball Lightning or something, right? It's doing like 120 on Ball Lightning, and this fire build is like rocking 150s and is getting another buff. So I don't know like how they crunched or came to these numbers that this Sorc build needed another buff. But yeah, I'm gonna link this video there in the tier list as well. This is Mekuna rocking here on the Firebolt Sorcerer. This currently, guys, is the best build in the game by a long shot. Like no one is even close, and no one in the Sorc is even close, and it's actually crazy, man. This is getting another buff. Just like it's crazy that the Flay is getting another buff. I mean, you know, the player base always likes buffs. But man, all the other builds are just completely left in the dust here. And this build is just rocking sky high. And this is also a very, like, not good representation for the Sorc class. Because the Sorc class in general is on a very, very weak state. And there's only this one build that is revolving around this like crazy area damage, shatter, fireball, burn mechanic that is also like multi-dipping in some ways and having all kinds of crazy things going on. And you guys can see he just absolutely is crushing in 150. And he is also using the fully immortal tag on the Sorc. So you notice he has permanent flame shield, so he doesn't need any toughness at all. He just goes full DPS, perma flame shield. You need very good gear for this. This is not recommended to be played by any casual players. Even, you know, more experienced players kind of struggle with this build. But it is just completely insane. And this clear is without the buffs. So this is only getting stronger. And I believe that this Sorc is like, it can probably do 155. After the buffs here. So it's even getting stronger, and for some reason they are buffing the most strongest builds, such as Flay, such as this build. I just really don't understand like how these balance decisions are being made on this end, because it would be very much cooler, I think, to see some buffs to, you know, Frozen Orb, see some buffs to the Blizzard Sorc, see some more buffs to the Hydra Sorc, or, you know, like some of the other builds, but they are only buffing this one build here, which already is basically revolving around like two crazy broken mechanics, perma immortality and infinite shatter area of effect damage. It's still super impressive, because this, what you see here, it may look easy, but it is actually extremely hard to pull off. So big kudos here to Mekuna, who managed to clear this. And yeah, he manages to take down the boss, and you can also only kill one boss. And you see the boss fight here in this clear is about 10 minutes, and this is only the one boss. Every other boss would just take hours and hours and basically be completely impossible to defeat. But this boss here is defeatable, and this is the best build in the game currently doing. And this target here has about, I don't know, like 7 trillion HP, and he is doing like barbillions and barbillions of damage with every single explosion here. Completely blasting down this. And this is also, there's an achievement for this if you do 150. And yeah, this Sorc build is just completely ridiculous. So fully immortal, flame shield Sorc with Firebolt, blasting down and taking down these bosses. And yeah, just a very comfortable 150 clear with some fishing. And it's getting stronger, guys. 23% damage buff to this build. And that leaves us with the tier list, guys. Again, the full tier list is going to be linked in the description. And yeah, some classes are more on the sad side. And I want to talk at the last point here about the general class ranking. So you can feel free to discuss in the comments what you think. But with this mid-season patch, guys, the class power used to be Necromancer the best, Barbarian rank 2, Rogue rank 3, Sorc rank 4, Druid rank 5. And now the new ranking, in my opinion, is Barbarian. How else would it be? Barb King number 1. The Barb has the most diversity in the builds. You can play so many different skills. They're even buffing Whirlwind, at least slightly. We'll see, the single target will still be a struggle, but Barb has Bash. Barb has like 5 variations of Bash. You have Flay, which is insane. You have Thorns, which is insane. And you have like a bunch of other cool builds that kind of work. Not really insane, but there's a lot of variety. You can even play a support Barb, so there is a lot of variety. So Barbarian is my number 1 anyways. And also, I believe, if you look at this, you know, from a more rationally, not biased, from my opinion, perspective, you see throughout the tier list, I think the Barb is the best class again this season. On the start, it might not have been, it definitely was the season of the Necromancers, but with the Holy Buck Elixir being changed, I think the Barb takes over from number 2, goes back to number 1. I've said it before the season started that Barb has one of the best builds with Bash. And once we saw that the Bash cleave was unchanged and also intended to be this way, we knew that Barb is king. The next one here, surprisingly, overtaking the Necromancer, in my opinion, from rank 2 is the Rogue. The Rogue actually has 3 insanely strong builds now, and for some reason was able to dodge all the nerfs. Again, +2 to exploit, but Rogue only feature. So it's still running Valti with the double dipping, not being addressed. So it has 3 top builds now. Heartseeker Victimized, then the non-bugged Rapid Fire, which is going to be a pretty cool build, I think. I might even try this one. And then there is the Anariel Flurry build here with Andariels being buffed by 50% as well, making it, I think, the second highest class. I think it was still very close between these. But I have Rogue on rank 2. Let me know what you think in the comments. And Necromancer Sladley coming down from numero 1 all the way down to number 3. And this has been mainly because of this. Because again, there was like many buffs, but the Holy Bolt Elixir double dipping was extremely prominent on the Necromancer. The Necromancer was, and they mentioned this in the patch notes as well, right? The Necromancer was by far the worst offender by abusing this broken interaction. And the Barbarian was quite up there with all the bleeds craziness as well. But the Necro, as they stated here in the patch notes, was by far the worst offender, hitting for about billions and trillions even of damage. So this has been extremely tuned down now. And the Necromancer is now sitting only in A tier, so only on rank 3. And then this might surprise some people. I actually have Sorc at number 4, despite having the strongest build in the game by a mile. I put Sorc at number 4, and I'm really curious of what you Sorc players think about that. Because again, the Sorc has this crazy class imbalance where you have the strongest build in the game by a mile, even getting buffed more for whatever reason. It's actually crazy, this class balance. And all the other Sorc builds are down in the shitter. In B tier, man. Frozen Orb is still in shambles. We have Blizzard, kind of meh. Ball Lightning has been giga nerfed, kind of meh. So there's actually like 3 tiers between, and like 30 tiers or 30 pit levels in between the rank 1 Sorc build and the rank 2 Sorc build. So Sorc class can definitely, I think overall for the majority of player base, not rank high, because it only has this one build that is extremely an outlier. And is also very hard, very clunky to play, revolving around many different questionable mechanics. And I hope that long term, we're going to see some better balance in the Sorc class. Like this build needs to be tuned a bit, and all the other builds, man, especially Frozen Orb, I hope is going to be brought back to the former PTR glory. Yeah, this is the 0.01% of player base that can play this build. And that is the reason why I put Sorc in number 4, chat. And on the last place, guys, how else would it be? It only got buffs this patch. But I made a detailed video also here. Big shout out to Ace of Spades again. I'm going to link that video in the description. And I think the Druid has only gotten buffs, guys, but it is still in the worst state of any class at the moment because there's just many problems with Druid. It has like a strong dependency on the Shepherd aspect and on some of the minions, and a lot of the synergies on the Druid don't really work. And you know, Druids got only buffs, but it was nowhere near enough to bridge this giant gap. Like, Druid is down here, all the other classes are kind of here. You know, like, okay, they brought the Druid like up like this. But in reality, it needed to come all the way here to be, you know, kind of close the imbalance gap. And again, the highest Druid clear at this moment is 122. And then getting a +2 pit level buff is a bit laughable for the Druids. And I feel why many players in the Druid player base and the community are a bit upset about this. You know, like, the Druid needed like 20 tier buff, which is probably like at least like a 5x or 4x in damage of many of their builds. And it got +2. Like, it got like a, you know, 15, 16, 17% buff, which is nowhere near enough even to bring it like, you know, out of the A tier or even like somewhere close to one of the top tier builds. And I think a good balance level would be, I don't know, around pit level 130 for most builds. So, I mean, looking at some of the tier lists here, and I'm definitely, you know, I didn't even play all the classes, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm pretty sure there will be more creators that will make tier lists here with another overview and another angle at this. But I really feel that the Druid still needs some love, and I think it's not... Obviously, it's a big challenge to balance the game, right? But I think it could be done without too much effort, like buffing some of the, you know, most underused builds here. And I mean, like, looking down all the way, like, we haven't even talked about F tier, like a pure Whirlwind Barb. Like, just using Whirlwind as DPS is still in the shitter. Like, it's only good because we have bleeds. Without bleeds, it's hopeless. And well, we also have the Call of the Ancients Barb, like, all the way into the shit here. And like, you know, they are doing like, I don't know, like a 10% buff here to the Call of the Ancients, which essentially arrived dead on arrival. Like, you know, the Korlik is getting 10% more damage. Okay. Talik is getting 20% more damage. Madwig is getting 13% more damage. You know, but in reality, like, it at least needs another 0. So it needs like a 10x to be even considered a build with the current power that we have in the game. Like, I don't know if anybody of you played like a Call of the Ancients or a Barb without bleeds. Like, I mean, I think you're going to be pushing like very hard to clear a level 100 pit. So yeah, these are like all the way down here in the shitter. And the same goes for like rabies. I don't even have it listed here. Like, they keep buffing like these things like rabies. And, you know, I think there has been a video made from Ace of Spades where rabies can't even do Nightmare Dungeon 100. And yeah, they are buffing it by like 10% or 20% or something. So some of these buffs definitely seem a bit weird. And definitely not sufficient to even... I mean, they help a little bit, but they are not like really, you know, be able to close these gaps that many players want. And I think it's a good thing to have a more fair and balanced game. That's why I'm also thinking, you know, the Flay Barb buff and also the Firebolt Sorc Shatter buff. I'm just asking myself why, you know, like, why are these builds getting buffs? I mean, again, players like buffs, right? And this has been a very positive patch. There's been buffs throughout the board, but I cannot understand why Flay and Shatter gets a buff and all these other builds here like Frozen Orb or even Hoda Barb or, you know, some of these like shit builds like don't get a buff, but the strongest builds that clear like 148 and 150 pit are getting a buff. Like, that is not really like the direction that I think is healthy for the game. I think we need, you know, to like close the gap between the top and the most bad builds here on the classes. And I mean, they're trying this, and there's definitely a lot of positive notes here. I've been very, very hyped about the Whirlwind Barb buff. I think it still has a tremendous single target problem, but there's definitely good changes here. It's very good, like, it's a positive patch, but I just think the expectation management for a lot of people, or the expectations, were just a bit higher to see like a bit more of a fair game and just a fair, you know, balanced approach here. And we'll see how this is all gonna turn out when Vessel of Hatred comes out, because we're gonna get the Spiritborn brought into the game as a new addition here. And we'll see, historically, guys, the new class has always been extremely powerful in Diablo games. You guys may remember it in Diablo 3 whenever they announced and brought the Necromancer into the game. The Necromancer, and I think we have been playing the red runs, like the red meta with Necromancers for like 10 years, like 1 decade. The Necromancer has been the most OP class in Diablo 3 pretty much, and I'm fully expecting once the Spiritborn hits that it's gonna shake up these, and you know, the new class, like they want to sell the expansion, they want to sell the stuff, so I think the Spiritborn is gonna come in right up here in S tier. It's gonna be one of the most crazy classes, and then depending if we're gonna get a playable beta in the Vessel of Hatred, I'm also expecting there to be a lot of bugs, especially if there's no beta. So we'll see, but I think the Spiritborn is going to be tremendously powerful when it comes out, and I think it also should be powerful because give players an incentive to try out a new class. But I really hope that they do some more testing, and they already confirmed they are doing more PTR servers, so we're going to get another PTR here, or at least a campfire talk on the 21st, and they also hinted at, you know, talking about the PTR and talking about Season 5, which is already coming out on August 6th, and this is going to be a short season, 2 months, and then on October 8th we have confirmation that Season 6 is going to start already, and the Vessel of Hatred will come out. And yeah, there's definitely some more work to be done in terms of class balance, and I think PTR and community feedback and listening to the player base and to people on the forum and people like from all different sources, and not only to, like, you know, 1 or 2 sources, and I think they are like very open of receiving feedback from a variety of different outlets, whether it is like, you know, a more casual player audience or a more endgame player audience. I think in generally the game is moving in a really cool direction. The Loot Reborn and some of the like cool changes that they've made here really hit it home for a lot of us as Diablo enjoyers, and I think Vessel of Hatred is gonna do more of that. I just hope that we're gonna, you know, see a more balanced game and a better class balance here in general. We don't have some sad classes, and everybody likes buff. I think the patch itself has still been a big W. And I hope you enjoyed the overview, guys. We'll play it all on Monday, and we'll see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed the overview, my friends, and I will see you here again very, very soon. Again, everything is linked in the description. Take care, my friends. GG. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like or a comment. I'm also live on Twitch almost every day, so come and say hi.